Now tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. That's the go-getter energy that moves all of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of wait for things to happen. And then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques, all under the umbrella of one unified philosophy that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is how to break unconscious habit patterns. Before we get into that, let me tell you, I have a daily motivation text I send out for free every morning to everyone in my text community. You can get that message guaranteed to keep you focused, sharp, and on point by simply texting me right now on my number, which is 305-384-6894. And the other thing is at workonyourgameuniversity.com is where you get access to the next level of the Work on Your Game world, which is getting into my coaching programs, getting access to all of my courses, all of my exclusive trainings, and my physical mailings that I send out every month to everyone who's a member of the university. That is all at workonyourgameuniversity.com. Now, the topic again today is breaking unconscious habit patterns. And this is the thing that I mentioned when I talk about the programming that causes many people to remain in their comfort zones even when they consciously want to do otherwise. So if you're in a position in your life right now where you know consciously you want to do some different things than what you're doing, but for whatever reason you haven't been able to move yourself to actually take the actions and do the different things, there are some unconscious habit patterns that are ingrained in you that have to be fixed. And until those get fixed, you're going to continue having the same problems and continue having the same frustration. So today I'm going to give you a primer, some tips on at least getting started with this. The real level of getting into this is taking my Bulletproof Mindset course, which is inside of Work on Your Game University. But let's get started on it here today. Point number one. Today's topic, once again, is how to break unconscious habit patterns. Number one, change your relationship with change. The reason why many people don't change in life is because they are so uncomfortable with the concept of doing anything different than what you have done up to this point, in terms of actions, in terms of people, in terms of the outcomes that you're getting different outcomes, and in terms of your thoughts. People get into habit patterns simply because we don't get conscious about the unconscious. So then we just continue to do things that are already ingrained in us, things that we are already comfortable with. And usually the things that we become comfortable with in our lives are things that we just model from the other people around us. Even if the other people around us have some habits that are not going to actually work very well for us, we just do them because that's the only thing that we know. We just model what we see. And 85% of the things that we do are unconscious, and they're known as habits because we do them over and over and over again, to the point that, again, being unconscious, we don't even have to think about them. We don't even realize that we're doing them. This is why I can confidently state that most people become a certain type of person very early in life. This is usually before you even reach adulthood, the legal adult age. Most people become a certain type of person before that, and they never change from that point. So our habits are in complete control of us through most of our lives. The only time you can take control of your habits is when you get conscious about things that are normally unconscious. And even then, the only reason you're getting control of them is so that you can change those habits, not to stop yourself from having habits. You get control of them, you change them, and then they go right back to working on autopilot. It's just that they can work on a different thing or be working in a different direction. But the fact of having habits, the actual existence of them, is never going to go away. This is just wired in us as human beings. So if you want to make change in your life, you have to change the unconscious habits. Thus, you got to change your relationship with that change. In other words, you have to get comfortable with the fact that some of the things that you've been unconsciously doing but you've become very comfortable with are going to change. And that's normally uncomfortable for people. To do something different than what you've been doing for the last 15 years, you got to change that relationship right there. And again, inside my Bulletproof Mindset 2.0 course, I explain to you exactly how this is done. Now understand, this is not something that happens involuntarily. All right, this will not just randomly take place. This is something you have to choose to do. And it's often uncomfortable because, again, it's taking you out of your comfort zone. So anything outside of the comfort zone is by definition uncomfortable. What has to happen is that you have to condition your brain to see this change that's going to push you out of your comfort zone. You got to see it as something positive and actually good for you, rather than something that is to be feared, rejected, run away from, or something that is uncomfortable. Once you can get over that hump, then you can make change usually very easily. And again, in Bulletproof Mindset, I'll show you how this is done. Point number 2, today's topic once again is how to break your unconscious habit patterns. Second thing you gotta do is flood your brain with material related to what you want to do, but you are not doing. So you want to do thing X, but you are not doing thing X right now. You gotta flood your brain with material that makes your brain, conscious and unconscious, comfortable with the concept of thing X, whatever it is. Unconscious thoughts are changed by emotionalized energy and or repetition. Those are the ways that you change what's going on in your mind unconsciously. You have to be emotionally engaged with a thought that's going to change whatever is already ingrained in there in your habits, or you can do both. You have to, by the process of repetition, beat the old idea out of there and bring the new idea in. This is the reason why we write down our goals. This is the reason why we have vision boards. It's the reason why motivational speakers exist. The reason why we do these things is to put us in a state of mind of feeling how we will feel when we have achieved the goal that we wish to achieve. And the more you can get yourself into that energy through emotionalization or through repetition, the better the chance that you will actually get there. See, the purpose is to create friction between your current reality, that is what exists right now, and a reality that you want. Usually there's a friction between what you want and what you have. Almost everybody, regardless of their level of achievement, has some friction between where they're at and where they want to be. And the key to actually getting there, or at least one of the starting points to getting there, is to keep your brain flooded with the visions of where you want to be, so that your subconscious mind understands that there's a conflict there and understands that it has to resolve that conflict. And it can resolve that conflict in one of two ways. It can either delete the where you want to be thing so that you stop feeling uncomfortable about the fact that you're not there, or it can help you, it can trigger you to take the actions, it can assist you and move you to take the actions that will reconcile that difference and make where you want to be the reality. Make your reality where you want to be, so that now the friction no longer exists. Then what you do is go create new friction by setting a new goal. So if you keep your brain flooded with visions of the reality that you want, your subconscious mind will eventually get the message and start moving you towards the reality through your actions. This is the power of repetition, again, and also the power of emotionalization. This is why people do things like affirmations. It's the reason why, again, when people have a vision board or you write down your goals, and if you are consistently referencing those goals after they've been written down, you don't just write them down and forget about them for a year, then go look at them again at the end of the next year. If you're consistently referencing those goals, consistently looking at where you want to be and comparing that to where you're actually at, that friction will exist. But the subconscious mind is not going to allow that friction to continue to exist. It's going to deal with that friction by either deleting the goal so there's no more friction, or fixing, or moving you, rather is a better way of saying it, moving you to actions that will help reconcile that friction so that the friction no longer exists. So if you're making 50 grand a year, you want to make 100 grand a year, it will either delete the goal of 100 so that you stop feeling friction about being at 50, or it will help you start doing the things that will move you to making 100 so that you don't have the friction anymore. So now you're making 100 and it matches what you wanted. Now you can set a new goal of making 500, and now the friction comes in all over again, and you just do this process all over again. This is an ongoing thing that you're going to be doing through life. So there's not a goal of not having this. You don't want to get to the point where you don't have any friction. You want there to be friction, because friction is a great motivator and inspirer that moves human beings to action. We move ourselves to action when there's friction in our lives. In other words, we want things one way, but things are actually another way. That is a great motivator to move human beings to action. So don't try to eliminate friction. Be happy that it exists. Point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is how to break unconscious habit patterns. Number 3, use your imagination. This is the other side. This is the emotionalization energy that you want to use. So we talked about emotionalizing and repetition are the two ways to kind of get new ideas into your subconscious mind. So The emotionalization is you imagining how it will feel when the change that you want actually occurs. So if you were making the kind of money that you wanted to make, if you were in the shape that you wanted to be in, if you did have the people around you who you wanted to have, you did achieve the goals that you've been working on achieving, or the goals that you've been writing down, how are you going to feel when you actually get to that outcome? How are you going to feel when that actually is a real thing? When you can imagine and get yourself into that mind state and get yourself into that energy state, this will have your unconscious mind engaged, and it will work to start changing the 85% of your thoughts that are controlling you. Some of those thoughts are going to change around the topic of whatever it is that you've been aiming for, if you can get yourself into the energetic state of feeling like that. This is one of the reasons why going to an event in the flesh, like physically being in the room, is more powerful than attending an event via a Zoom call or a Skype call or a phone call. Why? Because when you're physically in the room, you feel the energy of the event a lot differently than if you are consuming it on Zoom while you're washing dishes and changing your child's diaper and doing laundry at home. Even though you're getting the same information, you're hearing the same stuff, it's not the same energy. Can we all agree that there's a completely different energy in any kind of communication when you're physically in the same room with the person that you're talking to, or the person who's talking to you, as opposed to you hearing them talk but they're not physically in the same space as you? Can we agree that the energy is completely different? Of course it is. Can we agree that you usually get more of a person's attention when you're talking to them in person than if you're talking to them on Zoom? Because you never know what somebody's doing when they're consuming your material on Zoom. But if you're standing face to face with a person, you got all their attention. Oftentimes you have 100% of their complete undivided attention. Now this sounds like the simplest and easiest thing to do, this part here about using your imagination, but it's often the most difficult thing to do. The reason why is simply because we have conditioned ourselves to have our brains work a certain way. So to get your brain working a different way requires a certain amount of mental effort, more or less depending on who you are and how strongly your current mental habits are ingrained. So if you're looking to achieve at a completely different level than the level that you're at now, one of the biggest things that you have to do is you got to put the mental effort into, first of all, figuring out what is that other level. Let's get clear on the outcome. We talked about this a couple days ago, and you got to know exactly where you're trying to get to. A lot of times people just don't have clear outcomes, so it doesn't matter how much effort they put in, how much work they put in, how hard they try, they don't get to the outcome that they want because they don't even know what the outcome is that they want. So then they just keep doing stuff with no consideration of, where is this actually taking me? Where am I going to be in 5, 10, 20 years, as long as I stay on the current trajectory and current path that I'm on? When people start asking themselves that question, you can almost have a come to Jesus moment, as we say, with yourself. Because now you're saying to yourself, okay, if I continue on this path, I don't really like where this is taking me, because it's not really taking me anywhere. It's kind of keeping me in the same spot. I don't want to be in the same spot. I want to be in a different spot. Now you realize you're going to have to do some different things, and hopefully, and this is something that I mention often, you may finally decide to fire yourself from a job that you simply should never have had in the first place. This happens to a lot of people. They put themselves on jobs they should never have had. In other words, you put yourself in charge of your weight loss, but you don't know how to make yourself lose weight, and this is how you gain weight in the first place. You don't know how to lose the weight. Not necessarily saying that's always true, but you get my point. And when you have that come to Jesus moment with yourself and you realize that the process that I'm on right now is simply not working, and if I continue on this path, I'm going to end up in the same spot or in a worse spot moving forward, then hopefully for some of you that will be enough of a kick in the face, not a kick in the ass, but a kick in the face to get you to do something different than what you are doing right now. The biggest challenge for most people who don't have the outcomes that they want right now is not a matter of you working harder, believing in yourself more, being more focused, or being more disciplined. Even though these are the usual things that people say that they need in life, these are not the things that you need in life. What you need is a stronger vision, a more compelling mission, and you need to put someone other than you in charge of your forward progress. Well, you'll always be in charge of your forward progress, but get someone else's insight and input on your forward progress. It's a better way of saying it. The biggest challenge that a bunch of you have is that you are the only person who is offering you insight and input on your forward progress. I'm not counting stuff like a podcast or a YouTube channel, because they're not specifically directed at you. They're directed at the wider audience. But if all your information is coming from a podcast or a YouTube channel of a person who you don't even know, how is that helping you get better? I mean, this is an important question. The better you can answer this question, the more quickly you can get to the success that you want to be living. So what is it going to be for you? To get your brain working a different way, it requires a certain amount of mental energy, maybe more, maybe less, depending on who you are. And your mental habits will be ingrained based on who's around. All that said, let's recap today's class, which is how to break unconscious habit patterns. This is the thing I mentioned when I talk about programming that causes many people to remain in their comfort zones, even when they want to do otherwise. Number one, change your relationship with change. The reason people get into habit patterns is because we don't get conscious about the unconscious. So we just fall into these habits and then we just do them over and over again without ever thinking about it. 85% of our thoughts are unconsciously, so I can confidently state most people become a certain type of person early in life and they simply do not change. This is not something that happens involuntarily. It's often uncomfortable to change yourself, but this is the reason why most people don't do it. Point number two, flood your brain with material related to what you want to do, but you are not currently doing. This is the reason why we write down goals, the reason why we have vision boards, the reason why we get around other people who are playing the game at a higher level than us, because it tells our brain there's a conflict between what we want and where we're at, and to reconcile that conflict, the brain can either delete the goal or it can work to get you towards it. This is the power of repetition. Number three, using your imagination. This is the other side, using emotionalization to get what you want. Imagine how it will feel when the change that you want occurs. This will have your unconscious engaged and change that 85% of your thoughts that are controlling you. It sounds like the simplest and easiest thing to do, but it's often difficult because we have conditioned ourselves to allow our brains to work a certain way. We don't make them work a certain way. They just start working that way by default because we never consciously think about how our brains are working. And when you start to work on changing what has been ingrained in your brain, this is going to be a little bit of work. It's kind of like loosening a screw that's been screwed in for so long. You got to loosen it up. But once you get it loose, you'll be able to fix things and set them how you want. That's why we call it mind set. You set your mind a certain way, but many people's minds are set by default. You can start to do this on purpose. Again, get my Bulletproof Mindset course inside of Work on Your Game University. I will show you exactly how to do this. By the time you get done that course, you will have already done it. So with that said, text me, get my daily motivation every morning to your phone. My number is 305-384-6894. And secondly, workonyourgameuniversity.com, so you get access to all of my courses, all my exclusive trainings. You can work with me in my coaching program, and you get my monthly Bulletproof Bulletin and Masterclass Black Book mailing straight to your doorstep physically every month. That's at workonyourgameuniversity.com. Work on your game. Dre all day.